Neville Goddard'S Divine Secret Revealed, 3 Miraculous Steps to Supernatural Manifestation. In the heart of the quaint English village of Eldenbrook, the air shimmered with the promise of divine miracles. Margaret, a devoted woman with unwavering faith, held her beloved chapel close to her heart, a beacon of hope for her community. Renowned for her kindness, she was the embodiment of grace, known to share joy and warmth with every welcoming smile. Yet, behind that radiant demeanor loomed a crisis. Their small farm was on the brink of collapse, swamped in darkness and despair. As the clouds gathered above, paintbrush strokes of thunder rolled ominously. The villagers gathered in hushed reverence, prayers whispered into the swirling gusts. St. Jude, revered for his ability to navigate the impossible, became Margaret's faithful companion in this dark hour. One evening, they all came together to pray fervently, their collective voices reaching for the heavens, seeking that divine touch to restore their lives. Yet Margaret's faith wavered like a flicker of light beside her eldest son's skepticism. Tom, who once embraced the warmth of his mother's faith, now found refuge in science, often questioning the miraculous tales of their lives. "Mother," he pressed, "how can we still pray when facts scream at us? Isn't it time to face reality?" Margaret's heart ached, the chasm between them wide, each question striking like a hammer against the very foundation of her faith. Things grew more heavy as illness struck her youngest. His laughter had filled their home, now replaced with silence and feverish whimpers. Margaret stepped onto the precipice of desperation, grappling to save the life of her child while fighting to cling to her beliefs. The weight of her struggles bore down, each failed remedy a blow to her heart. Feeling the shadows close in, she attended a community prayer meeting, the chapel bathed in candlelight. An unexpected prophet stood before her, declaring words that surged within her like a tidal wave. "Fear not, for the hand of the Almighty is upon you." As the message sank in, particles of doubt melted away. Margaret recalled Neville Goddard'S teachings, magnifying the power of conviction and manifestation within her soul. Hope flickered within her, reigniting desires not just for a miracle, but for a renewed spirit in their village. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With renewed fervor, Margaret rallied her friends and fellow churchgoers, who filled the chapel in droves, their spirits unified in prayer. As they clutched hands, she felt overwhelming warmth envelop her. Each prayer was an arrow shot to the heavens, their conviction palpable. Her heart thudded in tandem with theirs, sensing that perhaps an answer awaited just beyond the horizon. Tom stood at the back, observing the transformation, a hint of uncertainty evident on his brow. As moments ticked by, the chapel pulsed with faith. It enveloped the room in a cocoon of belief. Margaret held her breath, standing before the altar, her heart a mix of trepidation and hope. Was this the divine moment they'd been yearning for? What awaited them on the other side of their prayers, a miracle or silence? The entire village held its breath, their fate intertwined with every whispered entreaty lingering in the sacred air. The stillness in the chapel seemed to stretch for an eternity, the flickering candles casting shadows that danced in tandem with their prayers. Margaret felt empowered, her spirit rising like incense from the altar, sending sweet fragrances of faith to the heavens. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to be fully immersed in the moment, trusting that the air around her was charged with divine potential. As the voices blended into a harmonious symphony of hope, cracks began to form in Tom's skepticism. He took a step closer, drawn by the palpable energy of belief that enveloped his mother and their beloved community. Could it be true? Was there indeed a power in this gathering that transcended earthly understanding? He found himself torn, caught between the facts that constricted his heart and the possibility of faith that stretched before him like an open sky. Margaret, sensing Tom's presence, turned. Their eyes locked, and in that brief moment, she poured out all the love she had for him. "Believe, my son," she whispered softly, "just believe. Sometimes all it takes is a spark." A flicker of understanding passed between them, softly challenging the walls he built around his heart. Suddenly, the chapel door creaked open, and an unusual stillness swept through the room. All eyes shifted toward the entrance. A frail, elderly woman shuffled in, her hair as white as the clouds above. The air seemed to shift with her presence, infused with an extraordinary light. It was Mrs. Henderson, the village seer, revered for her uncanny ability to sense the unseen. With a tremor in her voice, she beckoned for silence. "Children of Eldenbrook," she called out, her voice a gentle echo that resonated within each listener's heart. "I have a message for you all. The Almighty hears your prayers, and a change is upon you." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mixture of awe and anticipation. Margaret felt a swell of emotion rise within her, and she fought back tears as hope ignited once more. "What will happen?" someone dared to ask. "The Spirit is moving," Mrs. Henderson continued, eyes closed as if she were peering into another dimension. "This land has long suffered, yet your faith has forged a path. A miracle, yes, but it requires your step into the unknown. You must trust in what you cannot see." With that, the light from above brightened, filling every corner of the chapel. A warmth enveloped Margaret, a gentle embrace from the heavens reminding her of the promises tethered to her soul. The congregation felt it too, each heart responding with a chorus of amens and praises. Tom stood rooted, a tempest of doubt and curiosity swirling inside him. He observed his mother, surrounded by the warmth of community and divine promise, and in that moment, he began to question the certainty of his beliefs. What if the miracle they sought was not just a physical healing, but something deeper? Something that could mend not just crops, but broken relationships and hearts. Margaret sensed Tom's struggle and raised her voice, uniting her spirit with him. "When we gather in faith, we can change the course of our lives. Let us declare our desired future together." With trembling heart, she led her congregation in a chant, one filled with longing, faith, and the unmistakable power of collective belief. They spoke of healing, restoration, and hope, their voices harmonizing in an ecstatic rush, rattling the very foundations of their fears. As the final words echoed through the chapel, a stillness settled once more. Time stretched like a taut string, vibrating with possibilities. What would they witness on the other side? Would the promise of miracles penetrate the veil of their reality? Margaret opened her eyes, a gentle smile illuminating her face, and turned to Tom once more. The moment of divine intervention arrived, she whispered, uncertainty and excitement dancing in her voice. What awaited them in the next heartbeat would change everything. The heavens appeared poised for action, light trembled in the distance, and the essence of faith thrummed like a heartbeat, ready to burst forth. Would they step forward into the unfolding mystery? The flicker of candles seemed to shiver with the anticipation in the air. Margaret's heart raced as new possibilities collided within her spirit. Each breath filled with the intoxicating scent of hope. She looked at her fellow congregants, their faces illuminated by faith and conviction. They were all poised on the brink of something remarkable. Mrs. Henderson, still shrouded in divine light, inhaled deeply, her gaze sweeping across the gathered souls. "Do not be afraid of the unknown," she intoned, and her voice trembled with authority, "for it is where the extraordinary takes flight." Those words floated like sweet nectar, striking chords deep within Tom's heart. A story untold, a truth unseen, echoed in the stands of his mind. Could it be that buried in the rubble of his skepticism lay seeds waiting for a drop of belief to flourish? This moment, charged with divine energy, challenged him to reconsider all that he deemed impossible. As the congregation nodded their heads, entranced, Mrs. Henderson pressed on. "Within you lies the power to reshape your lives. The well of your faith can nourish the desires of your heart. But you must act boldly, for miracles require brave souls." Tom jolted at her words. Act boldly? His world was built on rationality, on things you could touch, see, and measure. And yet, the very ground beneath him felt alive, vibrating with potential. A whisper crested in his mind. What if faith was just the first step? What if he allowed himself to seek the miraculous? Margaret took a faltering step toward the altar, and her voice rang through the stillness. "Let us bring forth our dreams. Speak them aloud." Her heart's desire burned bright within her. She began to share her vision for the land, a fertile soil restored, abundant harvests, and a community healed and whole. "Bring forth your dreams," she cried again, and her eyes sparkled with conviction. One by one, voices rose in tandem, mingling with fervor and passion. "Restoration," shouted a farmer. "Reunification," cried a daughter yearning for her mother. "Provision," roared a father, desperate for his family's needs. Each voice connected a heavenly thread weaving them together. Tom stood amidst the swelling chorus, drawn like a moth to a flame. His heart thundered as the power of collective faith enveloped him. This was far beyond mere words. A profound energy swirled in the chapel, thrilling every person present. Was it truly possible that their words could summon the change they envisioned? As they chanted and prayed, a brilliant flicker of light emanated from the altar. Glittering like stars captured in a delicate web, it enveloped the hearts of the believers and radiated outward. Gasps filled the room as the congregation witnessed a heavenly manifestation. The air crackled with divine electricity, and then, something extraordinary happened. A small sprout broke through the floorboards of the chapel, a single green shoot reaching for the light. Gasps turned to awe, and Margaret clutched her heart, tears streaming down her face. This was no ordinary sprout. This was the first sign of life and affirmation of their prayers, an awakening of hope. Tom stood in disbelief, the hardened walls of his skepticism beginning to crumble. The sight before him stirred something profound within him. Perhaps this was more than mere chance, perhaps it was the very hand of God responding to the faith gathered in that sacred space. His thoughts surged with newfound wonder. What would the sprout transform into? What would happen to their dreams, their hopes, as they leaned into their faith? With his heart pounding with divine excitement, Tom took a step forward. He could feel the pulse of the miraculous, but could he trust it? As the congregation erupted into praises and tears of joy, all eyes turned to Tom. The moment hung like a ripe fruit waiting for him to claim it. Would he take this leap into faithful uncertainty? In this crossroads of belief, a choice awaited him. What revelation lay just beyond the threshold of his trust? Would he embrace this new beginning, or retreat into his known reality? Tom's breath caught in his throat as the congregation erupted into spontaneous worship. Their voices mingled in a joyous cacophony that reverberated within him, stirring the dormant embers of a faith he had long neglected. He felt both exhilarated and terrified, the weight of expectation heavy on his shoulders. Margaret's tear-streaked face shined with a vibrancy that illuminated the room. She caught his eye and nodded, a silent encouragement that urged him onward. Tom's heart raced as he glanced again at the sprout, its tender leaves defying the shadows of doubt that had wrapped around him for so long. Could hope really spring forth from the earth beneath his feet? Could this small symbol of life carry the dreams of so many? Speak it into existence. A voice cried out beside him. He turned to see Mr. Thompson, an elderly man whose weathered hands had tilled the local soil for decades. "Our voices carry weight. Let us reclaim all that we lost." The fervor in the room bubbled over, and Tom could feel the collective heartbeat of the congregation. It was as if they were pulled by an invisible thread, a unifying purpose driving them to declare their deepest desires. Provision, healing, unity. They shouted. Each word echoed with an intoxicating promise, vibrating in the depths of his very being. The fear that had shackled his spirit began to melt away, replaced by a dawning realization. This was not merely about speaking desires into the air. It was about believing them enough to watch them unfold. With every shout of hope, he felt the walls of his skepticism crack. What if he joined in? What if he, too, spoke forth his longing for something greater? Tom took a breath, a deep, cleansing breath. It filled his lungs with divine intent and ignited a spark of courage in his heart. Restoration. He finally shouted, blasting through the air like a bolt of lightning. The sound of his own voice astonished him, as if he were discovering a part of himself he never knew existed. The room vibrated in response, almost as though the very walls of the chapel were alive and breathing. The sprout quivered, shimmering with energy in the soft candlelight. Suddenly, Tom realized what Mrs. Henderson had been urging all along. His previous understanding of faith had been too cautious, too afraid of the unknown. True faith demanded boldness. It required him to step outside the confines of comfort and insecurity. Hope flourishes in the soil of belief. Tom called out again, feeling each word break through the barriers he had built. A back-and-forth rhythm of affirmation welled up as the crowd erupted in a supporting chorus. Hope flourishes. Hope flourishes. Tears flowed freely down Margaret's cheeks, and a wave of warmth swept over Tom. This wasn't just about individual requests, it was about collective healing, awakening, and an awakening of trust that transcended their fears. As the chanting crescendoed, a brilliant light erupted from the tiny sprout, illuminating the altar with a golden hue. It shone like the dawn breaking over a long dark night, beckoning others to step into its brilliance. Visions of their dreams mingled with the glow, transforming the space into a sanctuary of hope and miracles, but with every heartbeat that echoed through the hall, a question remained: what now? As the light pulsed with divine energy, Tom found himself standing at a true crossroads. What would it take to wholeheartedly embrace the extraordinary? Will you trust the light? Whispered a gentle voice in his spirit. It felt both inviting and daunting, echoing against the walls of his mind. What new adventures lay ahead if he chose to grasp that light? And what if the revelation that awaited him held more than he could ever imagine? With hearts pounding and the weight of dreams hanging in the air, they stood together, the congregation and Tom alike. They were poised on the brink of a celestial moment. What miracle awaited them? With faith fully awakened, the door to the miraculous creaked open. What would they find on the other side? As the light danced across the chapel, Tom felt as if he were on the threshold of something profound. The atmosphere crackled with energy, a sacred anticipation that thrummed in his bones. The congregation, their hands uplifted like the branches of a tree reaching for heaven, created a sight that was more than human. It felt angelic, transcending earthly boundaries. Margaret stepped closer to Tom, her eyes full of shimmering hope. You see it, don't you? She whispered, her voice barely above a breath. We are about to witness the unimaginable. Tom nodded, speechless. The reality of their gathering shifted. It was no longer just a meeting of faith, it was a sacred symphony of souls united in purpose. Each person around him seemed to glow, the warmth of belief wrapping around their hearts, creating a cocoon of love and possibility. The sprout pulsed with intensified light, throwing flickering shadows that danced like angels' wings. What does it mean? Tom thought. Could this tiny seedling truly reflect their united prayers? New beginnings are often disguised as the smallest seeds. Mr. Thompson's voice rang out, breaking through Tom's reverie. Everyone turned, even more fervor igniting in their eyes. Let's declare together what grows from our faith. Let us speak life over our dreams. Life! Tom shouted, feeling an indescribable surge of joy fill his chest. New beginnings. The chorus of voices climbed higher. Life. New beginnings. Each utterance was a building block, raising the walls of hope around them. Tom felt the collective energy envelop him, lifting his spirit. Suddenly, the light from the sprout expanded and enveloped the congregation. They stood at the cusp of something monumental, a transformation born from their shared belief. Gasps and cries of awe filled the air, stirring each heart deeper into the sacred moment. What if we are called to something much greater? Tom felt the questions bubble up within him. The light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his thoughts, urging him to probe the depths of his fears and desires. Was he ready to break free of the past and fully embrace what God was offering? Margaret gripped his arm, her eyes reflecting the luminescence spilling from the altar. Whatever happens next, we must trust each other. We are never alone in this journey of faith. Her words were a thread woven tightly into the tapestry of their shared experience. With her hand on his heart, Tom felt the warmth spread, igniting a tender bravery. As the light intensified, Tom closed his eyes, surrendering to the moment. He could almost hear the whispers of those who had come before, their faith carrying him forward. In that sacred silence, he saw visions of restoration, healing, and unity, not just for himself but for the world outside these walls. What was once a flicker of hope grew into a blazing belief. The voice returned, gentle yet firm. Will you step through this doorway? Trust the light to guide you. Tom's heart raced with the weight of the decision looming before him. The excitement in the air was palpable, transforming into a quiet determination that rippled through the congregation. What would they unleash if they united their voices in their deepest yearning? The questions hung in the air like the scent of blooming flowers. What awaited them on the other side of this moment? The promise of divine manifestation stirred inside him, ready to be released into the world. With eyes shining and hearts synchronized, they stood ready for whatever lay ahead. It was time to embrace the extraordinary, but would they heed the call of their newfound faith? Through the open door, the divine heartbeat beckoned. What awaited them would redefine everything. As Tom's heart thudded like a drum, a hush fell over the chapel. The light bathed them in a golden hue, illuminating every face, every glimmer of hope and despair alike. He could sense the weight of their collective wish, a powerful prayer rising like incense toward the heavens. It was as if a sacred crescendo was building, one that reached into the soul of every believer present. Margaret's grip on his arm tightened as she drew closer. "Are you with me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The question was not just a challenge, it was a lifeline. Always, Tom breathed deeply, finding strength in their bond. Together, they would dive into the deep waters of faith. "Let us go together," Mr. Thompson called out, his voice resonating with authority. "Take a step, take a leap into what we cannot yet see. Trust in what can come forth." Tom opened his eyes and gazed around at the faces he had come to adore, each person a vessel of God's love. The unity was palpable, and he could feel the very fabric of their community weaving together, creating an unbreakable tapestry of hope. The sprout on the altar shimmered, responding to their energy. It flickered like a candle in the wind but stood still against the storm of uncertainty brewing inside each heart. As the light pulsed, it began to reach out beyond its tiny boundaries, and Tom felt drawn to it as if he was being called to let go of everything he had known. "Let us lift our voices," Margaret urged, her face radiant with faith. "Declare what we wish to see. Claim the promises. Hope. Healing. Unity." They shouted in chorus, a fervent, rising tide of determination washing over the chapel. The words came out like waves, crashing against the shores of doubt that threatened to overtake them all. As the chant grew louder, Tom felt the ground beneath him shift. He could almost hear the fabric of reality twisting and turning at their command. A vibrant tapestry was forming, a manifestation of every prayer, every tear shed in faith, every single heart laid bare in trust, and then it happened. A sound like no other filled the chapel, soft yet thunderous, like the gentle rush of a river meeting the ocean. In an instant, the light from the sprout exploded outward, washing over them in warm waves of love and acceptance. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a divine hug that embraced each person, lifting burdens from shoulders and lightening every soul. Tom looked at Margaret, whose eyes were wide with awe. "Can you feel it?" she whispered, her voice breaking through the majesty of the moment. "It's happening." Tears streamed down Tom's cheeks as he surrendered to the depth of grace enveloping him. Warmth radiated from the source of their calling, igniting a fire of purpose. He felt every doubt, every fear dissolve into the mosaic of hope they were creating together. In this tender moment, he knew they were on the edge of something miraculous, yet, a question lingered, whispering through the recesses of his mind. What were they truly being prepared for? What awaited them on the other side of their faith? "Step forward," the voice beckoned again, a gentle nudge that sent shivers down his spine. "Trust me with your hearts." Each heartbeat echoed the urgency of the moment. Fear and excitement twisted into an exhilarating mixture in his chest. The threshold was not merely of space but of spirit. What doors would they open? What wonders lay beyond in the realm of the unseen? As Tom stepped forward, he felt the pull of divinity drawing him into uncharted waters, eager to see what lay in store for them next. Would they find the extraordinary? Would they unleash the miracles waiting to be born from their united faith? The air crackled with expectation, and together they readied themselves for the leap into the unknown. As Tom and Margaret stepped forward, time seemed to stretch, the flickering light from the altar casting dancing shadows all around them. Each pulse from the sprout felt like a heartbeat of God, a living reminder of the promise that lay ahead. It thrummed with potential, echoing in the hearts of everyone present. In that charged atmosphere, Mr. Thompson's voice cut through like a clear bell. "Let us open our hearts," he proclaimed, and everyone took a collective breath, their chests rising and falling with anticipation. surrender the weight of your fears. Let faith wash over you like a cleansing wave. Tom closed his eyes, letting the moment envelop him. He could hear the whispers of hope mingling with the soft sounds of tears. He sensed that each drop was a prayer released, a release of burden, a letting go. In that sacred space, he knew the walls between heaven and earth thinned. Margaret squeezed his hand, grounding him. "We've come so far," she murmured, her eyes glistening. "This is just the beginning. Trust what's happening." And as he opened his eyes, he caught sight of the altar again. The sprout was no longer just a light, it was transforming into something more larger and more vibrant, shimmering with colors he could barely name. Each hue seemed to dance with divine energy, inviting them closer. The congregation around him stirred. Eyes were wide with wonder, mouths agape in silent awe, hearts racing. It was a kaleidoscope of emotions, shared fear mingling with faith, anxiety turning into exhilaration. Tom felt the unity they had built, a bond pulsating through them all like the sprout's light. "Speak your heart's true desire." Another voice rose, calling them higher. "Claim it now. The moment is ripe for miracles." With a deep breath, Tom took a step closer to the altar. "We want healing," he shouted, his voice rising above the collective murmur, emboldened by the presence surrounding him. "We want a revival of spirit." His words echoed back, not simply empty sounds but rippled through the very air itself, infused with power. The sprout flickered in response, pulsing as if receiving each word, collecting each wish in its magnificent embrace. It was a living testament to the strength of faith, a reminder that belief could shape the world around them. Tears began to flow freely among the crowd, each person touched by something beyond their understanding. A wave of peace washed over Tom, filling his heart to the brim. It was a comfort, a certainty that all was well. Even fear seemed impossible now, replaced by a hope that felt tangible, almost touchable, but questions stirred within him again. Why did it feel like they were on the brink of something monumental? What would this miraculous leap lead to? Tom's gaze drifted over Margaret, who was lost in her prayerful moment. It was as if their combined faith created a bridge, leading them into deeper realms of understanding, the whispers of heaven dancing around them. Then, without warning, the sprout erupted with dazzling light, illuminating the chapel and enveloping each believer with warmth. It was both an invitation and a revelation, sending tremors of anticipation racing through every heart. "We stand at the threshold," Mr. Thompson declared, raising his arms. "Are you ready to step beyond the sacred veil?" The moment hung thick with divine possibility. Tom felt that familiar pull, urging him forward, nudging him past the realm of the known. They were here, ready to explore the miraculous. What awaited them on the other side of that light? What extraordinary doors would open to their unified faith? The congregation held their breath, hearts synchronized in a sacred rhythm, awaiting the next moment, the moment when they would cross from hope into reality. As the brilliant light enveloped them, Tom felt almost weightless, as if he were being lifted between worlds. It was intoxicating, the promise of new beginnings tinged with the scent of something sacred. There was a collective gasp from the congregation, each soul drawn to the brilliance that held them in its grasp. Margaret's grip tightened on his hand, her voice a soft whisper, a reaffirmation of trust in the unknown. "We can do this, Tom. Together." Her words floated through the air like offerings, and he could feel faith swelling within him, like the tide rising at a beckoning moon. The atmosphere shifted. A palpable energy took hold, vibrating with the excitement of unspoken dreams. Tom glanced around, catching glimpses of faces illuminated by the divine glow. The elderly man with kind eyes who always sat near the front. The young mother in the back who often wrestled with her own struggles. Everyone was united in that fleeting moment, a tapestry of faith woven tighter than ever. "Step forward," someone urged, and the gentle encouragement echoed in Tom's heart. "Don't hold back your spirit." With those words, the dazzling light seemed to beckon them deeper, igniting their desires into blazing flames of hope. Tom took a deep breath, filled with gratitude for the path they had walked together. All fears fell away, and he stepped forward, trusting the path illuminated before him. As he moved closer to the altar, the light intensified, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. The sprout was now radiant, brilliant hues of golds and blues twinkling like stars against the night sky. It felt alive, pulsating with an exhilarating rhythm, stirring something deep within him. "Come forth, children of faith," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice reaching deep into their souls. "Accept this moment. Welcome the miraculous into your lives." And just like that, Tom believed it was truly possible. He envisioned waves of healing washing over not just himself, but the whole congregation. Each heart, each life, was a canvas ready to be painted with grace and restoration. Suddenly, he could see tiny bursts of light flickering from the sprout, like sparks of joy shot outwards, landing softly among the crowd. It was a divinely orchestrated symphony of love and healing. Tom heard murmurs of delight, tears of joy falling, hearts released from the bonds of fear. Margaret stepped beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look," she breathed, pointing toward the sprout. "It's happening." Before his eyes, the light began to weave among them, intertwining with hopes and dreams, each spark translating into a story of triumph. The woman who had battled illness for years rose from her seat, enveloped in the glow as hope surged through her veins. The young man who had struggled with doubt stepped forward, tears flowing freely, feeling a weight lift from his soul. No longer just a sprout, it had transformed into something magnificent, an offering of divine love that connected everyone in that sacred place. In that instant, Tom knew that they were on the brink of a miracle. But what form would it take? What truths would be unveiled in the brilliance of that light? The air felt thick with divine possibility, yet heavy with anticipation. The congregation awaited, hearts racing, breaths held, unified in faith, standing at the edge of something grand. What revelation would emerge from the brilliance surrounding them? What new path would their collective faith illuminate next? As the light pulsed, Tom recognized that they were not just witnessing a miracle, they were about to become part of it. The warmth of the light wrapped around Tom and the others like a comforting blanket, drawing them together even as it pushed them toward the unfolding mystery at the altar. With each pulse of brilliance, he felt a deep resonance within, as if the sacred energy was communicating something profound. His heart raced, hope intertwining with curiosity. "What do we do now?" Margaret's whispered question pulled him from his reverie. Her voice was barely audible, yet it carried the weight of 100 unspoken thoughts. "I think we need to stay open," Tom replied, instinctively knowing that surrendering to this moment was essential. It wasn't just about witnessing miracles, it was about participating in them. As the congregation stood, their breaths now synchronized, a gentle vibration filled the air like distant chimes ringing softly, a celestial orchestra heralding the unknown. The elderly man with kind eyes lifted his hands, surrendering to the moment. Around him, others followed, arms raised high, hearts wide open as they welcomed the divine flow. The light began to shift colors, swirling from soft pastels to vibrant hues. Tom could see the sparkles reflecting on people's faces, joy and wonder breaking through the barriers of doubt. The young mother who had been struggling, her brow furrowed just moments before, was now laughing, her laughter blending with the melody of hope reverberating in the room. "It's beautiful." Margaret's eyes glistened with tears as she gazed at the spectacle unfolding. "It's like our prayers are being answered." Tom nodded, feeling awe wash over him. He whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, aware that they were not alone in their hopes. No, this was a communal act of faith emerging from each heart laid bare. "Feel the embrace," Mr. Thompson's voice echoed, soothing yet powerful. "Let go of your burdens. Release your fears." With those words, an overwhelming sensation permeated the space. One by one, people sank to their knees, tears flowing freely, as the light began to envelop them individually. Tom felt a tugging sensation in his heart, a calling more intimate than before, urging him to let go entirely. What if, Tom pondered out loud, the thought just forming? What if it's not just personal healing? What if it's something more? More? Margaret's eyes sparkled with anticipation. What if it's collective healing? One heart for another? The idea ignited a flame within him. He imagined not only his own pain lifted but also the burdens of others tied to their unspoken fears. As if responding to his thought, the light around them brightened, illuminating every corner of the room. The tapestry of faith was becoming a chorus of praises, not just individuals standing alone, but a community energized, strengthened, and woven tighter by divine connection. The air shimmered with expectancy, as if it held its breath alongside them. In that moment, the boundaries blurred, time became irrelevant, and space felt holy. People began to rise from their places, not just in body but in spirit. Those who had once felt alone now stood beside one another, understanding the divine dance they were part of. It was more than a miracle, it was transformation, transcending personal narratives into a collective destiny. Can you feel it? Tom turned to Margaret, urgency in his tone. We're on the edge of something extraordinary. But do we dare to believe it? Before she could respond, the light pulsed more intensely, wrapping them in the warmth of divine affirmation as it beckoned them deeper. Tom's heartbeats synced with the rhythm of the light, every pulse stirring a deeper question, a more profound truth waiting to be unveiled. What awaited them next? Would they truly be ready to step into the full revelation of their collective faith? As the brilliance enveloped them, a quiet whisper slipped through the atmosphere, hinting at divine intentions yet to be revealed. With the overwhelming brightness encircling them, Tom felt the weight of his doubts dissolve, replaced by an unwavering conviction in the collective heart of Eldenbrook. Margaret, standing beside him, exuded a warmth of spirit he had long yearned to embrace. The flickering aura of the chapel pulsed rhythmically, mirroring their awakened faith, a heartbeat of hope echoing against the darkness that once consumed their lives. Together, we are stronger, he whispered, urging himself and those around him to unite their hearts, minds, and voices in fierce devotion. A resounding affirmation vibrated in the chamber as others echoed his sentiments, hands lifting in surrender and praise. Each shout broadened the glow of the light, intertwining their souls in fervent expectation. Then, the atmosphere shifted, thickening with the promise of something miraculous. Mrs. Henderson raised her trembling hands, her voice rising above the harmony. Children of God, do you feel the Spirit moving? Miracles await those who dare to believe. The intensity of her declaration ignited a fire within Tom, setting ablaze a new, infectious fervor. Let healing flow, he proclaimed, his voice rising like a trumpet in the stillness, shockwaves of faith shaking off remnants of fear. Bring forth our visions. The moment burgeoned with power, prayers cascading like a waterfall, washing over every soul as they rallied together. Margaret squeezed his hand, her eyes shimmering brighter than the light embracing them. We are on holy ground, my son. Let go of doubt, trust in the unseen. Her words echoed in the depths of his being, resonating with a truth he could no longer ignore. With every voice lifted, the light pulsated, dancing like flames in a gentle breeze. Tom turned to the sprout, now fully transformed, its radiant blossoms unfurling in a spectacular array of colors, illuminating the faces of hope mingled with tears. This is us, he cried, realizing the profound shift unfolding before him. This is our community resurrected. The room erupted into joyous chaos as people embraced, laughter cut through the heaviness, and the air crackled with energy. Old wounds were prayed over, pledges for reconciliation made, and dreams for prosperity shared. No one felt alone in that collective moment, each heart beating with intent. Tom's spirit soared as he glanced around, witnessing the miraculous change unshackling one life at a time. He met eyes filled with joy, surprise, and faith that was once thought to be buried. Mrs. Henderson, her face aglow, stood in reverence, signaling that the manifestations had begun. There it was, the tangible evidence of heaven touching earth. Miracles are here, Margaret exclaimed, her voice resonating through the divine celebration. We will restore our land. Our faith brings forth every promise. In that sacred space filled with reverberations of praise, Tom felt a new certainty bloom within him. This was not merely a moment, it was a movement, the divine stepping forth into the ordinary, igniting the dreams that resided within every one of them. That realization banished the final ice of doubt from his heart. Suddenly, a floodgate of warmth enveloped him, that unmistakable, loving embrace of God. Will you trust this light to guide you? A gentle voice beckoned deep within his spirit. The question loomed larger than all he once believed. In that touch, in that voice, every barrier fell, and with it, Tom stepped forward, abandoning his fears and expectations, ready to explore what it meant to lean fully into faith. He squeezed Margaret's hand firmly and shouted, "We trust. We believe." The congregation exploded into ecstatic worship, clapping, dancing, and lifting praises to the skies. The transformation was real, ignited not just around the altar, but within every heart present. As the light cascaded, vast and encompassing, Tom glimpsed marvelous visions for the community: a thriving land, laughter-kissed gatherings, families restored in unity and love, and a legacy of grace shared across generations. And in that moment of all-consuming hope, Tom knew this was just the beginning of their story. It would ripple beyond Eldenbrook, sending waves of faith out into the world for all who dared to believe. Step by step, their sacred journey had commenced, and miracles would follow. With hearts ignited by divine purpose, they, the humble villagers of Eldenbrook, would embrace the extraordinary together, woven into a tapestry of undeniable truth. As they rejoiced, a gentle breeze swept through the open chapel doors, the Spirit whispering promises of new beginnings. Now it's your turn to carry this flame within your heart. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive faith stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support this mission. Comment your reactions and testimonies about the ending below. Let your voice be heard. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this manifestation of hope and love. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true servants of God understand the importance of spreading this message.